Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Soul Talk. This is Leora Mandel. I'll be joined with Rabbi David Aaron after the break. I think that one of the most important components of a relationship is trust. The ability to trust the other person who you're in that relationship with, whether it be someone that you're working with, a friendship, and especially a spouse. I think any kind of relationship, if you actually want to feel close to somebody else, you need to be able to trust them. You need to be able to be vulnerable with each other and feel like you can share the way you feel, share your thoughts, share experiences, that when they say something that they, most of the time, I don't know if anyone could be 100%, that you can rely on them. And trust is one of those things that does take time to build. I think some people right away, you feel connected to the person. You feel like, wow, we get along. We have a lot to share with each other, similar interests. You can find that out even on a first date or a first meeting with someone who ultimately may become a good friend of yours. But it takes time to build trust. It takes time to sense that this person is there for me when I need them, that when I share something, they're able to keep my information private, that I can feel comfortable sharing. It won't come back to bite me, that there's a sense of trustworthiness in terms of I can rely on this person, that they'll be there for me, but also there's so many aspects of trust, as we all know. When I feel like I can trust someone else, I feel safe with someone else. There's so many aspects of why and reasons why trust is so essential and so important in a relationship. The challenge with trust too is that the trust, it builds from the time we're very young. If we feel like we have needs as a child and they're answered by our parents are there for us. If parents, again, this a lot starts with parents. If parents tell us something and that more or less we can expect that what they tell us will follow through. Again, nothing's ever 100%. We're human beings and even people are trustworthy. Sometimes things come up that we can't expect. But that an overall experience in life is that with friendships, with parenting, with teachers, with work experiences, if I've had a lot of experiences where people I more or less am able to trust them, it makes it easy to feel like I can trust somebody new in my life. On the other hand, if I have a lot of what I'd call trust scars, experiences where I sort of learned early on maybe that someone's not reliable, that I'll share something with somebody, it will come back to hurt me. We almost have to build a wall to protect ourselves. And then even when we're in a safe relationship, it can be very difficult to feel like I can open myself, take that risk of being vulnerable to let myself trust somebody else. So the question is, as much as trust is so important in a relationship, how can I build trust in a relationship that is maybe a little bit shaky, where the trust maybe hasn't been 100%? Or if I have a history of having had experiences that have made it hard for me to now trust even a safe person, how can I build trust, regain trust, and have that trust that creates that intimacy that I so long for in my relationships? When we return, Soul Talk, Rabbi David Aaron and Leora Mandel.
Israel is located in one of the most volatile areas in the world. Israel is an island of stability in a sea of war and unrest. In the midst of this turmoil, Israel stands out as a beacon of order and human progress. Each week we update you on what's happening in this, the Jewish state, a true light unto the nations. This is Jay Shapiro. Join me every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Welcome to Soul Talk. This is Leora Mandel with Rabbi David Aaron. Rabbi Aaron, an essential component to any close relationship is trust, being able to trust the person that you are in a relationship with. And as important as this is, I think there are so many that struggle with this challenge of having trust. I was thinking about it that to some degree, I think as infants, as long as our needs are taken care of, there's almost a natural trust we have for others, with others. And then, unfortunately, what happens so often is as we live our lives and go on is that we'll have a situation where someone will betray our trust. And then it only even has to happen once. And it can become so difficult to learn to trust someone again. And when you can't trust someone, it's really hard to feel close to someone. It's hard to feel connected. It's hard to feel vulnerable. And it's hard to have a healthy relationship. And I think there are so many in situations that are in relationships where trust is a real challenge in terms of it's a challenge in the relationship, and it's a challenge in helping the person feel comfortable, confident, and connected to the person they're with. So my question is, how can one build trust, and especially when a person is struggling with this ability of how can I trust somebody else? If trust is broken either within that relationship or within one's history, how can they relearn to gain trust again?
Right. I read not long ago a very shocking statistic, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was way, way beyond belief on how many men are cheating on their wives and how many wives are cheating on their husbands. It was a very high percentage. It wasn't a small percentage. And so I think exactly this topic of trust. And I think the first step is to define, well, what makes somebody trustworthy? What is that quality of trustworthiness?
Mm-hmm.
And I think another word that we could substitute for trust would be integrity. Integrity is that this is an integrated person, meaning what referred to in Torah as toho kebaro. What he is inside is what he shows on the outside. There isn't some double standard. What's in his heart is in his mouth. And he doesn't have this kind of two-faced approach to life. And you want to find somebody, it's basically honesty, whereby you feel that this person is who they are representing themselves to be. And, I'm no expert on this, but, there are on YouTube plenty of experts that can tell you how to spot a liar and things like that. And that's not my expertise. But you want to feel that you can communicate with someone and that what they're saying is what they actually want to be saying and what they're actually feeling inside. And you're not going to discover that they've been putting on a show when on the inside, this is not at all who they are.
And all this actually takes time to really be able to build up, because it takes time to get that sense of I share something with someone and they don't share it with others. Someone says something and that's what they really mean. And a lot of times, again, it takes time to see how all this plays out, that a person really is trustworthy. And I think people have had this experience too, where someone may seem to be the kind of person you think you could trust, and then as time goes on, you learn you can't. Or you may be wary of trusting somebody, and over time you start realizing, you know what, this person really is trustworthy. What they say is what they mean. They have integrity.
Yeah, I remember I was I was involved with a company that was helping me in marketing, and the staff that we were working with, they did an exercise where everyone would share a question that they would like to get answered. And one of the fellows there, a man in his mid-40s, late 40s, I was shocked by his question. And he shared this with everybody. My question is my wife cheating on me? And I thought, wow, what that must be like, that a man even questions that, even wonders about that. And what is, and you know what? And I think that trust really takes time and spending time, not just simply time, but like really sharing time, where we the couple or the friendship has shared enough time together that you really do have the opportunity to read them. But yeah, it's the foundation of relationship. If you can't trust somebody, then in the back of your head, you're always wondering whether they're betraying you or not.
So there's so many challenges of trust. Now, obviously, I think the biggest betrayal is when there's an affair or there's an outside person entering a relationship that shouldn't be there. But there are so many couples that have so many other aspects of questioning trust. Sometimes it has to do with finances. This person isn't being honest about or my spouse isn't being honest about how they're spending money. They're hiding things from me. And sometimes again, there's really big issues that come out, which can make it very difficult. How can you trust someone again once they breach that trust? But there's sometimes all these little smaller, I should call it, smaller kinds of breaches in trust that really shake the foundation of a relationship. And when someone is in a relationship where there are some of these smaller breaches in trust, there also if there's a big one, but let's even start with the smaller kinds of breaches of trust where they said one thing, but maybe, and sometimes it can even be, well meant. Like they said they'll be home at a certain time and they weren't. And this happens so often that I can't trust what they're saying when they tell me they'll be somewhere, because they just don't. They're well-meaning. They'd like to be back at a certain time. They know I'd like them to be back, and yet they procrastinate. Things come up. They're not, it could be many reasons. They're just not as realistic about how long things take. There can be so many kinds of things. But I think, again, there are so many relationships struggling. You're talking about the high percentage of affairs that go on, which is a huge breach of trust. But even in these smaller aspects where the trust starts getting shaken, how can a couple bring that back on track? Or when I've lost, maybe I've done certain things that have maybe with my partner, my friendship, my wife, my husband, maybe they've lost a trust in a certain aspect of my capacities, let's say, to be transparent about how I'm using my time, spending money, doing things that have to do with the family. How can I possibly even try to regain that, since, again, even from the beginning, it takes so long to try to earn that trust?
I can't think of a solution other than sitting and really communicating one's feelings. And not from a place of criticism. We've talked about this before. You don't criticize somebody. You just share your needs. And it's not only fair, it's required to if you want them to be transparent, you have to be transparent and say, listen, these are my needs. I'm struggling with the feeling that, you are, operating with a double standard, and put it on the table,
Well, you said a number of really, I think, important things right there. Is that, first of all, we want the other person to be transparent, and yet if we can't be transparent, and I think this is sometimes common, that the things we're frustrated with in somebody else, sometimes we're struggling with ourselves. So we can put all the focus on, well, they're not being transparent. But if I focus back on myself, I'm not being transparent by not expressing, communicating the way I feel in a very clear fashion, and just holding it in and just getting frustrated by it.
Yeah, but we also have to be very careful not to be so quick to judge that the people are not trustworthy, because a person could say, I think he's hiding something from me. And the question to that is, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? And most people will, if they're honest, will say, well, I'm actually not absolutely sure. Well, so then what right do you have to think that? And so sometimes we're judging harshly the other person, and we're projecting our own trust management on them. So we really do have to be careful. And if it's serious, then it really should be in the presence of a professional, whereby the two can really talk to each other and hear each other.
It is so important, because I think so often, especially when there's a lot of misperceptions, and let's say, for the example even of the person who's maybe hiding some of their spending, and that seems like it would be a major issue of trust. But if you get to the bottom of it, what it comes down to is that maybe there's different senses of how money should be spent, but there's maybe the fear of having someone else upset with you, maybe not thinking things through, realizing, well, trust is also a very big concern. And so therefore, in order to not have the other person upset, that's why I didn't share things. And had they thought it through in terms of the consequence of possibly losing trust, which might even be more of a concern, that the strategy might have been different too. But that would be another example of, it's not even maybe the trust issue as much as there's something underlying the situation that is important to deal with, but not the core of it isn't, I can't trust you.
That's a great point. It could be that I've created an environment where this person feels they can't be transparent because I've been so critical and I've been so unforgiving that the person, in order to survive, begins to hide things from the spouse. And again, that doesn't make it okay, but it does make it understandable, and it does make us realize that a trusting relationship takes two. And it could be that, yes, that's true, this person, you've lost your trust in this person, but you've created an environment that kind of facilitated them constantly hiding from you because they were afraid that you wouldn't accept them if you knew this about them.
It is so interesting. In any relationship, there's a dynamic, and sort of like this dance, and that the moves of the dance, whoever makes one move, it affects the next move that the next person can also make. So I never want to have a blame game of saying any one person is necessarily responsible. Sometimes there's one more responsible than the other, but there is this aspect of examining this dance and seeing how we're playing off of each other. But also one person who makes a new move can also then create an opportunity for someone else to make a new move. And that's also a very powerful, powerful tool to know that we have.
Oh, yeah. If a person is in an issue with trust, then we have to start by looking at ourselves. And rather than saying, well, what are they doing wrong? I think we should also, or first off, say, well, what could I be doing more right to address this?
When we return, Soul Talk, Rabbi David Aaron and Leora Mandel.
The Tamar Yona Show.
Tamar? She's sassy.
She's smart.
She's funny.
But she's also a real Jewish mother.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tamar Yona. And yes, I can be all of those things. But at Israel News Talk Radio, I'm here to bring you the news stories and guests that you may not hear anywhere else. Join me live on air Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays for the most unique and bold talk radio in Israel.
The Tamar Yona Show.
Hello and welcome back to Soul Talk. Leora Mandel with Rabbi David Aaron, talking about a really essential component in any healthy relationship, which is trust, the ability to trust another person. But Rabbi, right before the break, you spoke about that we have to look at our first place to look at is in ourselves. And what's the role that we're playing in this dynamic of being able to trust another, but being able to be trusted. And I was thinking about that is so important, because I think in addition to sometimes this being a core challenge in relationships, the issue of trust, I think this is a core challenge sometimes within ourselves, even being able to trust ourselves. Like if I say I want to do something, I want to take something on, I have to be honest with myself. We're so often not even able to trust ourselves because we're not being honest with ourselves. We don't even necessarily have self-integrity separate from a relationship that we might be in. And when you're saying that's the place we have to start, that is so important.
Right. And as I mentioned before, what are we doing to facilitate the other person to start doing things that are mistrusting? But, I've a number of years ago, a couple asked me to help them. It's not my job. It's not my training, but help them in their marriage. And it was very interesting how each one thought the other one had to change. And it was almost like the process was they're going to wait, and everything could work out if only they would change. But it doesn't work that way. And so if there's some issue of trust here in a relationship, I think it's fair that a person not just simply blame the other person, but also look inside oneself to see have I played a role in facilitating and encouraging this, or almost forcing them to be in this way. Again, doesn't make what they did right, but it does begin the process of how to make the situation right.
And when we focus on ourselves and trying to, again, examine where am I maybe possibly facilitating this, that gives a lot more hope for change, because the reality is, as much as it's so much easier to focus on changing somebody else, that the only person we really have an ability to change is ourselves. And so if I can find where maybe I can make a change, whether it be some environment I'm sort of creating that facilitates or does not facilitate trust, or the way I respond to the person when a certain situation, whatever it might be, is there's more of a hope for me to change the dynamics of the relationship, and the hope for possibly regaining and rebuilding trust if there's something I can do instead of focusing on what the other person has to do, which I have no control over.
Right. And I think what helps a person, so to speak, come clean is that they actually do believe that they can be forgiven. Because, why do people hold on to negative behavior, self-destructing behavior, and they know it's self-destructing? Because they don't feel there's any hope that if they were to change, they'd be accepted and that change would be enough to fix the past. And so if I can't fix the past, then I'm just going to continue to replay it. And that's a huge factor in people's relationships, is they don't feel they could be forgiven. You know, it says this about Adam, that when God turns to Adam and said, "Did you sin?" And he says, "I sinned and I'm going to continue to sin." It's a weird thing. It's like what we call chutzpah, what audacity you should say to the God. But one of the kind of like deeper understandings of that point was that he didn't know that he could be forgiven. He didn't believe that he could do something that, and it's true because it's irrational. Forgiveness is irrational. A person did something wrong and they say, "I apologize and I regret it and I won't do it again. And so let's wipe out the past as if it never happened." Like, why? But in our tradition, it says that Hashem created the power of tshuva, the power of repentance, before the world. And that's to tell us that the power of repentance transcends the laws of nature, the laws of logic, of the natural order of cause and effect. And that in some strange way, when a person regrets and confesses and accepts upon themselves to change their ways, then you can clean the slate of your past and start all over again. That's incredible. And so I think that there are people that have kind of learned to do things of mistrust, which could have started early on as children, where they, felt that when they did want to make a change, it would not have been accepted, and what they did would never be forgiven. And so then, so what? So I'm just going to continue to behave this way.
That is so important when I'm the one who's trying to make the change. But as you're sharing this, I'm thinking, if I'm on the receiving end of a breach of trust, as much as there's obviously a part of me that would love to really be able to trust this person again, because the quality and the health of my relationship and the future of my relationship very much depends on my ability to trust you, there is this feeling that happens in a person that feels like they've been betrayed in some way, is that you almost feel like you have to protect yourself. And it's very hard to open yourself up to giving that other person the opportunity to prove themselves again, to trust. It gets very tricky. On the other hand, you're saying, and I think there's truth too, is that it is important that we forgive someone, because it can be hard for someone to really change if they don't feel that they have this opportunity to really make a change and that it will be accepted.
So it goes back to serious communication. Because when people talk, or they don't talk, to be more correct, when people don't talk, or they feel they can't talk, or they've been shut down because of a previous conversation where they wanted to come clean, and yet they felt that the door was not open, or that they would get, a barrage of criticism and anger. So they just get stuck in a pattern. And so if people can open up real communication, whereby a person feels supported, that if they tell you their darkest secret, that they've been hiding and that they've been, manipulating life situations to keep under their lock and key, if they know that they can be vulnerable and they can really come clean, then they will.
And this goes into, again, what you were saying earlier about doing what we can to create the environment that someone feels safe. Because as you said, with criticism, which is usually, you don't care about me, you're not considerate, you're not only thinking about all that is going to put a person up and become defensive, and there's going to be not too much open communication going on. But the power of what you were saying before, if I can say, I really feel like it's hard for me to plan around not knowing when you're going to be home. It's, for me personally, it feels difficult when I don't know what to expect you. That's all of a sudden changing the dynamics of making it feel like it's a much safer place for someone to be open and honest and to open up.
Right. But even the way you just described it sounded slightly critical. It's difficult for me. I would kind of re-edit that and say, it would make me really happy. It would mean a lot to me. So it's not like you're causing me pain by saying it's difficult for me that you don't come on time when you say you'll come on time. because I'm reminding this person that they're causing me pain. And so that's just, nobody likes to hear that, even though it's not quite a criticism and you are expressing your need, but it's expressing a need in a way that is kind of awakening a wound here. But if we could kind of, I'm a real believer in word crafting, and that there are certain ways of saying things, certain words that just detonate. Like I feel I'm walking through a minefield and just the wrong move and it could just push someone's button. So I think if we just say in the sweetest way and say, it would mean so much to me, or please, can you do me this favor? It's just, I know that I don't know. I know you're a very free flowing person, and I don't want to get in the way of that. But for me, it just really is helpful that we stick to time. And I just put in the word "we stick to time," so it's not like just you do that, but that we both are committed to, to the times that we set up. This way, I try when I speak to someone the best I can to include myself, and people, by the way, are very much more open when we include ourselves. Like, look, I'm not saying that I'm so great at time either. And I know that there are times where I said I'd be here at 8, and I also have missed the mark. So let's together work on this for each other. Now it could be the other person's doing it 90% of the time, and you did it only 3% of the time. But rather than speaking to them or at them, speaking with them is a lot more effective to begin to build that trust, that they feel they can trust you in that you will be forgiving and let go of the past. They also have to feel trust that, that you're inviting to renew the relationship and rebuild the relationship, and they need to trust that you're going to be there and not, come down on them.
And that goes back to, again, there's a dynamic in the relationship, and as much as I might be focused on the other person, what they need to work on, there is this aspect of I also have certain things that contribute to that dynamic, and if I focus on what I can do, that is the potentially most effective side of things for there to really be some change. The question is, what you're talking about here, I think, can help so many relationships to really rebuild that trust, and especially the way we go about things is so important. But there are some relationships that someone will do all the right things, and time again, they just will feel like they're really being hurt by someone who just seems like they can't get the trust piece together, no matter how sweetly, how nicely, how clearly there is some sense of communication, that it just time and time again, they're disappointed. And you can see that it can make a person sort of, it can be difficult. How many times can I feel like I'm really making myself vulnerable to try to trust somebody else, and I just keep getting hurt? So when we return from the break, what can a person in that kind of situation that, again, unfortunately, no matter how many times they try, they just feel like they've lost trust, and it almost, again, makes it difficult to try again. When we return, Soul Talk, Rabbi David Aaron and Leora Mandel.
In a time where feelings have become fact, where rational thought and common sense has disappeared, one man stands above it all.
I'm Howie Sobiker, your political hitman.
Political Hitman airs every Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. North American time, 7 a.m. Israeli time, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on The Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Soul Talk, talking about the importance of trust in a relationship, how to build it, And especially if someone's in a relationship where they feel like the trust is lacking, what are tools that one can use to try to restore trust? And right before the break, Rabbi was giving some very important tools specifically about clear communication and how to go about communicating to build trust. But I did ask you, Rabbi, that as much as these tools I think will help so many relationships, there definitely are a certain number of relationships that you can try everything and you just feel like you keep on getting hurt time and time and time again. And I think the more a person that has relationships where they've been hurt, when they really did try to restore things as far as they understand it and they feel hurt, it really does become hard to possibly feel like you, even a trustworthy person, someone you should trust, unfortunately you build up this wall of self-protection. So when someone has that, even once they're in a healthy relationship, that actually it would be healthy for them to try to trust someone, how can we break down those walls that sometimes it's like a scab, the skin has to just callous itself to not be hurt time and time again?
Well, look, there could be a situation where it really does require professional help where, because what is motivating let's say in the case of a spouse or a child, what is motivating them to do these underhanded, behind your back kind of behavior? Where is that coming from? Why are they doing that? And is there something you're doing that's actually facilitating that or encouraging that? What is that? Like let's say your son betrays your trust and takes money out of your wallet without getting permission. Well, that's upsetting. What is going on? How can I trust you? If you go into my wallet and take money, how could I trust you in anything? But maybe the reason why the boy is taking money is because you're not giving him an allowance and he needs money. And he's tried to communicate that, and it's not working. And he just needs some money, and he would stop if you would facilitate that, or in a relationship where this person is speaking and they shouldn't be speaking to their secretary. And they haven't done anything intimate, but you start to feel like, how can I trust you when you said you'd be home at 8, and I find out that not only did you came home at 9, but you came home at 9 because you hung out and talked to the secretary. Terrible. I'm not in any way diminishing how terrible that is. But maybe on the other hand, the spouse, she or he, is not feeling that you're someone that they can talk to. So what are they supposed to do? Now, again, it doesn't make it right. But we want to make things right, and we're trying to be smart, not right. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is going on here that is possibly, encouraging this behavior or almost forcing them in that direction, even though it's still their free choice, of course, and they have to own up to that free choice. But it all goes back to, let's not figure out who's right. Let's just figure out how to make this right.
Which is so important, because I think so often we do get caught up in the blame game, that instead of actually, which is the ultimate goal, is we want to have a healthy, strong relationship, we can get so focused on pointing fingers at the other person who has to fix it that nothing really changes, which is so important. I another dynamic, I've seen this in marriage, and I've seen it in parenting, is how often do let's say we tell our child, you know what, I want you to be honest, tell me the truth, even if I don't want to hear it. It's more important that you tell me the truth than that you lie so that I don't have to know what happened. And then let's say some child comes home with some problematic story that they really did something wrong, and they're honest with you about it, and you blow up it, and you get all upset, and it turns into a whole big to-do. And then what's the thought? Well, you know what? It wasn't worth telling mom about this as much as she said be honest. Look at the trouble I got into. If I would have lied about this, it might have been a little bit, easier. You could have this in a relationship too. Be honest. Tell me how you feel. And someone shares honest feelings, and then there's all this pain and crying and tears, and I feel so hurt, and how you this is how you have to be smart about things. But you can see how a certain dynamic could be created of a person being hesitant to say, well, I'm a bit concerned about maybe sharing something next time if it seemed like it caused such a blow up.
Right. I heard one of my rabbis, he explained something very interesting. He said, don't try and catch your son stealing a cookie from the cookie jar. Because if you catch him, then you have basically proven to him that he's a thief. And he will get used to that and say, okay, well, then I guess I'm a thief. And so, of course, you don't want your kid to not be, to be stealing a cookie from a cookie jar, but it's not by catching him. Because by catching him, you have literally sealed that definition of, so I am a thief. Well, if that's it, then I have no, I'm doomed to this identity. And so also, I think, a very important point in building trust, that we don't try and catch people doing things that are mistrusting, because the embarrassment will be so great, but not necessarily the motivation is to change, because they're just so hurt and they're so disappointed in themselves. You don't want them to lose their own trust in themselves that they could change. And so that's a very important dynamic. And a big part of it is love, love, love. All we need is love, but it is not easy, but it is the answer.
I keep thinking, I feel like a person who's been in a situation where, unfortunately, maybe it can start young, they had a situation where already maybe parents, they lack of trust, or teachers or certain friends that had situations. By the time a person actually enters a serious relationship, there may be a lot of trust scars, I guess I'll call them, that again make it difficult. The more scars we have, the harder it is to open ourselves up to someone else. On the other hand, you might have a person who is very easy to trust somebody else, and therefore almost vulnerable to realize they're being taken advantage of by someone who sees their vulnerability and is possibly taking advantage. So this is a very complex topic, because on the one hand, there are times where we shouldn't be trusting someone. We actually should be protecting ourselves from possibly being hurt. On the other hand, there's people who we should trust and we should open ourselves up to, that we've put walls up against them because we have all these trust scars, I guess I'd call them, that make it difficult to just recognize, no, this is a safe place to really trust the other person.
Right. Well, so, it really depends who this relationship is with. If you're in a business relationship with someone and you can't trust them, then then one of the solutions is to stop doing business with them. But if this is your child, you can't stop doing, being their parent. And if this is your spouse, yes, it's true that there is divorce is a possibility, but it's really, really the last resort after we've done everything to work things out. We'd prefer not to get divorced. So in that case, we have to be able to facilitate people feeling comfortable and confident that they can be honest, that they can apologize, and that they can feel that they can be accepted and start a new leaf.
And what is so important, because I keep thinking of this term like a trust scar. If trust has been broken, it's like a wound and I'm left with that scar. But I think what is powerful about what we're talking about here is that, Rabbi, you're really giving tools, especially the idea of open communication, and you have to help ourselves be a little bit vulnerable for that first opening of communication, but also how to go about it. It's not just, in a critical kind of open communication, but then that very much softer tones and expressing how I'm feeling about a situation, not trying to accuse you of anything, but meaning there are tools that a person can slowly try to use to be able to go back into the waters of realizing, this person may be, I really hopefully can't trust them. I have to be open up myself and become a little bit vulnerable to allow myself to trust somebody else. And then again, a relationship that is built on trust is a very deep connected relationship. If I'm in a relationship that doesn't have a sense of trust, I'm not going to ever really feel a sense of that deep connection.
Yeah.
And this brings me to one final point that I think is still a very important touch on with this, is that, I often sense that when people have issues with trust in human relationships, I think it does filter into and carry into our relationship with God. Do you sense that when we have challenges in relationship and trusting people, it also has an effect on our ability to have a sense of trust in God? And when we have a sense of being able to know how to trust somebody else, it also filters into our relationship with trusting God?
Absolutely, because one of the keys to change, which we talked about, is the ability to be forgiven, to genuinely feel that as much as I disappointed somebody, it is possible that their love is unconditional for me, and that if I genuinely regret what I did, acknowledge what I did, and make every effort to change, then I'm accepted and I'm forgiven. I don't know how much, I think a lot of people never experience real forgiveness. And I think we're stuck in that we can't even forgive ourselves. And one of the powerful, powerful teachings of Judaism, and I know I've shared this story before, where a Rabbi saw his students playing chess and he asked them how to play the game. It looked intriguing and they told them the rules, but then they said, and Rabbi, when you make a move, you can't take it back. The Rabbi said, well, I can't play this game. It's not a Jewish game. In a Jewish game, you can always take it back. To really believe that a person, because otherwise we just keep reinforcing the non-trusting relationship. And so, but it starts off with communication, unconditional love, but a communication that is, the words are crafted in a way that doesn't make the person feel bad. Because if they feel bad, how are they going to believe in themselves to change?
I think so much of what I've taken from, and I think this has all of us hearing this today, a lot of internal thought of, in any relationship that we're in, if we're feeling like the trust isn't where we'd like it to be, the real focus needs to be on myself. Where am I in this role? Where am I in the dynamic? What is the work that I need to do within myself to foster an environment that can facilitate trust? And if this is an environment that maybe isn't facilitating trust, what is it that I need to do? What can I do so that I can also find that inner place of trust in my relationship with others, and trust ultimately with my Maker, with God?
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
Howdy, this is Rita from League City, Texas, now living in Israel. And though my heart may have belonged to Texas, it now belongs to Israel and all the fantastic show hosts at Israel News Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Michael Solomon from Kiryat Arba, Israel. And why do I love listening to Israel News Talk Radio? Because I love listening to the interesting interviews they do and their news reporting that most other media sources don't cover.
Hey, this is Nicoleko from Malmö, Sweden. It gets pretty cold here in Sweden, so I love cuddling up with a warm cup of tea while I listen to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey everybody, this is Frank Morris from Tennessee. Me and my dog Buster really love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.